Chapter 14. Shauna parked their cart next to three others. She imagined one was for Sarah and Givens, whose trailers were just 10 or so meters away from hers and Catfish's, and two to cover Moore and the HAL team. The only question was where Moore slept. If it was in the same building as the HAL folks, then she might have shared one of their carts, but Shauna didn't think Moore was the kind of person who would willingly inhabit the same structure as other people, let alone the plebeians working for her. Like Catfish, Shauna didn't like aggressive, arrogant people. However, the difference between her and Catfish was that she knew that not everything was a personal slight. He had plenty of reason to be wary of people in positions of power, but hell, didn't everyone? If you worked in the oil fields or on the technology side like Catfish, you discovered early on that some people had all the answers, all the power, and all the incompetence imaginable. All too frequently, they ended up managing a mission-critical area of expertise, resulting in accidents and needless casualties. That's why Thomas's team had worked for him again and again. It wasn't the paycheck, which was great, but the respect he gave his team, that he always listened to their suggestions and often reformulated his plans based on their findings, had more than earned their loyalty. He'd been adaptive, confident, yes, arrogant at times, sure, but not when it mattered. The real question with Moore was whether the misanthropic air surrounding her speech and behavior was genuine or manufactured. The idea it was the former terrified the hell out of her. Moore had the power of M2 sitting beneath this facility. The substance's ability to consume anything biological and reproduce at an astonishing rate made it a threat to the entire planet's ecosystem. Moore held the keys to unleashing or destroying it. That power had been given to her when she rescued the samples from Ben Taub and HAL. If someone fucked up and a sample escaped, it was because of her power. If the creatures were destroyed, again, because of her power. And if she wanted to kill everyone who'd ever laid eyes on M2 or knew about it, that was her power too. Shauna only hoped the woman had been sincere when she said her goal was for everyone to get through this and the samples destroyed. If not, they were all dead. Shauna stepped out of the cart while Catfish grabbed the crutch from the back and carefully maneuvered himself to stand on the wet concrete. "Got it?" she asked. "Got it," Catfish said. "When do you think it's going to stop pissing on us?" "Didn't you look at the weather report?" "No, why would I do that?" Shauna shook her head. "Because you wanted to know?" "Really miss my phone," he said. The sentries near the door nodded to them. Catfish smiled at them, although Shauna knew it was fake as hell. It was his way of saying fuck you without actually speaking. The commissary doors were open and a moody light shone from within. Shauna and Catfish stepped inside and felt like they'd entered the Twilight Zone. A large round table had been set up in the middle of the dining room, and the unnecessary chairs and tables stood against the far wall. The round table was laden with real plates, real silverware, bottles of red and white wine, and quite a few potholders looking bereft of their payloads. The HAL team had already been seated. Kate waved to them and pointed at the empty seats around the table. Jay reached for the bottle of red near him, paused, and gestured to Neil. "You do it." Nodding at Jay's embarrassed smile, Neil handed the bottle to Catfish and Shauna. "Bottoms up," he said. Shauna held out her wine glass and allowed him to pour. Catfish sneered at the wine but accepted it. She had to stifle a laugh. He liked all things alcoholic, but wine was probably his least favorite. Now, if Moore had offered him bourbon... She giggled as Catfish tentatively sniffed at the glass, his face recoiling slightly before trying another sniff. With a sigh, he took a sip. His face wrinkled as he swished the wine around his mouth. At last, he uttered a quiet burp. "Not bad," he said. Jay and Neil started laughing. Kate just held her head in her hands. Shauna clapped him on the shoulder. "Y'all might want to just let it set on your tongue a while." She leaned closer. "It's the polite way to drink." "Oh, right," Catfish said, putting the glass down. "That was a very good Texas drawl," he said to her with an imaginary tip of the hat. "Why, thank you," she said, batting her eyelashes. Catfish blushed slightly and scratched at the unkempt patch of beard on his left cheek. "Welcome." "Shauna?" Kate asked. She turned to look at the lead scientist. Kate had ditched the lab coat for a thin sweater, its cuffs puffed out as though she were constantly pulling the fabric to her elbows. The woman was pretty. It was a shame this was probably the only time Shauna would see her out of a lab coat. "Yes," Shauna said. Kate's smile faltered a little. I didn't get a chance to catch up with you after the lab tour. Shauna shivered. No, you didn't. What did you think? Most expensive I've ever worked in, she said. That was no joke. PPE had had the best people, equipment, and management, but their labs hadn't held anything like what she'd seen in this facility. Once you entered the airlock using your bracelet, an aerosolized chemical agent streamed through jets hidden in the wall to remove bacteria and viri. You then donned a heavy but flexible, well-air-conditioned pressure suit and a throat-activated mic. She hadn't believed the procedures they walked her through. Jay and Neil had demonstrated the use of the portable incinerators, the oxygen cutoff system, and a decontamination cubicle large enough to fit 3 people. She'd frowned when she'd realized the cubicle was on a set of tracks. Does this thing move? Shauna had asked. Move? Neil had suddenly looked flustered. Oh, right. Well, For crying out loud, son, Foghorn Leghorn had said. Just get to the point, boy. Shut up, Neil had muttered. Decontamination might be a bit of a misnomer. When he hadn't immediately continued, Shauna had said, And? Jay had sighed loudly. He's trying to tell you that one of 2 things happen if you go in there. You either get burned to a crisp by those soldiers over there, or the lovely sergeant out there. Or they move you to the quarantine level. Move you? Shauna had asked. What do you mean, move? It has those tracks, Neil had said, because it's an elevator. Oh, Shauna had thought for a moment. And why is there a difference? Damn, I wish Moore could have told you this instead, Neil had said. Fine, you wimp, I'll do it, Jay had said. If your suit gets punctured or dissolved in any way, you'll be moved to that chamber. Once you're inside, you'll be observed and asked what happened. While you tell your story and they review the cam footage, they'll assess how bad the damage is. But make no mistake, they'll fry you if there's more than a spot on you. Will they fry the lab too? Shauna had asked, desperately trying to keep the fear from her voice. Neil had pointed at the stainless steel walls. A large recessed LED monitor showed a split video view with a control panel. A quick look told her you could subdivide the screen into 4 windows, zoom, and pan. The lab room has 3 levels of security, Jay had said. The first is a full UV spectrum blast, which your suit will get when you leave here. Any experiments with M2 will include a spotlight of harsh UV. If the sample escapes its box, it'll be instantly fried. The lab is lit so that even if a minuscule dot of M2 gets out, it'll be easy to spot. The placement guarantees there are no dark corners for M2 to hide in, no vents for it to crawl through, no way out. The second, he'd continued, is for the area to be evacuated. The room will be aerosolized and ignited. We'll create a fireball similar to a fuel-air bomb. Jesus, Shauna had said. What's the third, a nuke? The third, Neil had said, is the lab, this corridor, and everyone inside this facility gets immolated, as well as the equipment and anything else. Nothing will escape. Nothing will escape, she thought. If anything sounded like famous last words, that phrase covered it. Any questions? Jay had asked. None whose answers will make me feel better, she'd said. That's how I felt, Neil had said, one hand rubbing absently at his bald spot. And I helped design this portion of it. Shauna had raised an eyebrow. Wait, you, Kate, and Jay designed this? We had a little help, Jay had said. This facility existed long before we got here. It was made to handle a variety of possible pathogens or biological entities. Government thought they would be incarcerating an ET in here, just not the kind that eats everything, Neil had said. Jay had said, facility underwent an upgrade about 15 years ago. Guess the prospect of someone being dumb enough to bring down an asteroid sample, Martian soil sample, or something like that, put the fear of Beelzebub in someone. That's when they made the system more modular. We just had to include the stainless steel and a few additional M2 specific safeguards like the UV. The only problem is the goddamn power. She turned from the view screens and frowned at Jay. Power is a problem? Not power for the facility, Neil had hastily said. That's pretty well covered. No, it's the UV lights. We didn't exactly have time to reinvent the wheel, so we did the best we could. They can be unreliable. Goosebumps had covered her skin. How unreliable? Jay and Neil had exchanged a glance. Was this why they hadn't let Catfish down here? So he wouldn't freak out? Or was this particular parcel of information something they decided to let her in on, rather than counting on Kate to do it. We have a lot of them, Jay had said, to cover any shortfalls, but we can't have them on all the time. The bulbs will burn out too fast. He pointed at the lab area behind the glass. Still, we'll have 2 soldiers with incinerators standing guard. If something happens inside there, M2 will have to survive the flames and escape the lab before the failsafes kick in. I wouldn't worry about it. Impressive, Shauna had said. So now that I know all the ways I can die, can I see how I'm going to die? That's right, my fellow humans, Jay had said in the radio announcer's voice. Fatalism is the word of the day at Miskatonic University. Miska what? Shauna had asked. Miskatonic. You mean from Lovecraft? That's right, Shauna, Jay had said. You win the Cupid doll. Neil had shaken his head in exasperation. Jay, I know you're nervous, but shut the hell up. M2 is such a boring name, Jay had said. Besides, something with tentacles that we don't understand, enough to defy the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology, a creature that can eat damn near anything on the planet. His helmet had slowly shaken to and fro. I don't know what could be more like an elder god. Shauna had considered that for a moment. Point taken. He's so damn dramatic, Neil had said. Oh, my friend, and mocked putting an arm around Neil's shoulder. Let's not give her our old married couple routine until she's gotten to know us. Shauna had giggled. You are like an old married couple. See what I mean? Jay had said. All right, let's show you the classroom. You okay? Kate asked. The lab. Kate was asking her about the lab. She bounced back to the present with a mental lurch. Fine, Shauna said. Just trying to remember if I had any questions. No worries, Kate said. Hey, Jay said. No shop talk. This is our inaugural dinner here at Miskatonic University. Catfish turned to Shauna, question on his lips. She held up a finger. I'll explain later. Besides, Jay said after he took another sip, I'm starving. That didn't last long. A few moments later, Chef Robbie appeared, his hair tastefully tied back and a puffy chef hat poking the air. His chef's whites were immaculate, and she doubted he'd worn this set while cooking. He placed steaming trays upon the potholders and opened each in turn. Steak, fried chicken, herb-crusted salmon, roasted fingerling potatoes, steamed mixed vegetables, salad, bread. It was like having a buffet at a swanky restaurant. I'll bring pitchers of water and iced tea momentarily, Robbie said. He made eyes with Catfish. You want an energy drink? No, thanks, he said. Robbie nodded. All right, tuck in and let me know if anything isn't to your liking, he said, quickly disappearing into the kitchen. Who's paying for all of this? Shauna asked. Jay snorted. I'm sure we are, he said. Call it our hazard pay courtesy of the taxpayers. Let's eat. Chapter 15. During the meal, Shauna noticed that Robbie had provided Jay with 2 plates of diced, easily chewable pieces of meat. One look at Jay's burn glove told her he was unlikely to use a knife to cut. Every few bites, he winced as he manipulated the fork. By the time they'd finished dinner and the dishes had been swept away, Shauna thought she would burst. Her head danced a little from all the wine she consumed, and everyone at the table had gone loopy. Although their plates were set, Givens, Sarah, and Moore never appeared. Shauna thought that odd. They were either too good to eat with the geeks, or something else had their attention. She wasn't sure she wanted to know what that something else might be. The lingering taste of peppercorn, heavenly protein, and a healthy serving of greens and beans overpowered her curiosity. Besides, all she wanted now was to waddle to the golf cart and drive to the trailer. Sleep was calling, and she was listening. Jay, Neil, and Kate shared war stories about working at HAL, while Shauna regaled them with her trips to Nigeria, Saudi, and the UAE. While they discussed chemistry, she spoke more about the dysfunction and danger in the oil patch, some of which they already knew. Catfish hadn't said much, and she wondered why. He was normally guarded but affable. Something had changed after Leaguer, or maybe something else was on his mind. She hadn't had a chance to get the skinny on the engineering area. Robbie appeared one last time to make sure everyone had everything they needed. Catfish whispered something to him. He smiled and disappeared again into the kitchen. When he returned, he held a small grocery bag, placed it in front of Catfish, tipped his chef hat, and disappeared again. What's in there? Shauna asked. Provisions of a sort, he said. Shauna rolled her eyes. Well, Jay said, stifling a mighty belch, I think it's time to hit the rack, as they say. Have to get up early. Early? Catfish said. Why early? Kate sighed.
Guess no one told you. We're only allowed in the lab between sunup and sunset.
Shauna asked through a yawn.
Another safeguard? Yes, Kate said.
What? Why only those hours? Catfish asked. Shauna touched his shoulder as if to impart a secret.
Because they want to make sure if M2 somehow gets out while we're handling it, it happens when the sun is up.
Oh, Catfish said. So it'll fry.
Exactly, Kate said.
Got it. Time for sunrise? 0647, Jay said through a yawn. Sunset at 1726. Catfish whistled. Still a long day. True, Jay said with a grin. But we only work from 0730 to 1700, with as many breaks as we need. We can study film and results when we're not testing. Gotcha, Catfish said. Jay looked at Neil. You ready to go? Neil didn't bother stifling his burp, which rang in the dining room.
Yep.
Kate glanced at him with exasperation, but it didn't look real to Shauna.
Disgusting, both of you,
Kate said.
We are,
Neil admitted.
You hanging here?
He asked Kate. She nodded.
Have work to do and a couple of personal things to handle.
Ah, Jay said. Let's go, driver. That cart ain't gonna drive itself.
Wonder if I can get a DUI while driving a golf cart, Neil said.
I'm sure you can, but not here, Jay said. Let's go. The two men said their goodbyes and disappeared. Shauna and Catfish were out of their chairs nearly as quickly. Sarah waited for them just beyond the threshold with two large green duffel bags at her feet.
Hello, she said.
Hi, Shauna said. Missed you at dinner. Sarah smiled.
Don't worry, we ate. Here are the items Dr. Moore managed to get you. I understand there are some choice toiletries and other niceties in there.
Who went shopping? Catfish asked.
I believe it was Dr. Moore, Sarah said.
Cool. He tried to lean down to grab one, but quickly decided that was a bad idea.
I've got them,
Shauna said, reaching down and picking up one of the heavy duffels.
Shit. Sorry. Forgot about that.
Sarah lifted the other one and easily placed it on her shoulder.
I'll throw it in the back for you.
The rain had stopped again, but the frigid, humid mist clung to every piece of exposed skin. Shauna knew it wasn't that cold, but damn it, it felt like it. When they reached the trailers, Catfish couldn't stop himself from yawning. I need a nap, he said. It's still too early to sleep. Shauna said nothing, but he was right. She still didn't know what time it was, but although the sun had been down for a long time, she couldn't believe it wasn't even 2100 yet. If she slept now, she'd be up at 4 a.m.
If you sleep at all, she thought.
That was the problem. Sleep had been hard to come by, although not for lack of opportunity. And after what she'd seen in the containment area, she wasn't sure she'd ever sleep again. After unloading the two duffel bags and the small parcel Robbie had given Catfish, Shauna walked him to his trailer, opened the door, and ushered him inside. She left the duffel with her initials at the threshold and carried Catfish's to his bed. He didn't follow her. When she returned to the living room, he had pulled 3 items out of the bag: a pint of Jim Beam, a small rectangular box, and an envelope. He stared at the words, Mr. Stanley, signed in neat cursive on the envelope's front. Shauna wrinkled her nose and sat down next to him.
Who's that from?
Don't know, he said, but I have a pretty damn good idea. With a sigh, he slid his thumb to break the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It had no letterhead, stamp, or marks apart from the handwriting. She read it over his shoulder and grinned. He looked mortified. Mr. Stanley, Shauna said aloud, it has come to my attention you have attempted to acquire cannabis from Chef Robbie. This violates your employment contract, as you are to ask the facilities manager, which is myself, for all necessary provisions and not rely upon other employees to gather them for you. I also ask you not to imbibe any intoxicating substances 2 hours before your work hours, during your work hours, or before a scheduled emergency drill. Thank you for your understanding. Bitch, Catfish said.
Holy shit, Shauna said. Open the box.
He did. A small, multicolored pipe the shape of a circumcised penis with a bell-shaped head stared back at them. Inside the box was a plastic baggie of plant bulbs, a tiny grinder, and pipe cleaners. Catfish blinked at it. She got me weed, he said. You have to be kidding me. Shauna laughed. I can't decide if that woman is the devil or just snooing us all. Either way, she knows how to take care of her employees. He shook his head. I don't even know if I can trust smoking this shit. And that asshole Robbie ratting on me?
How do you know he ratted on you?
Because I gave him a damn note, Catfish said.
Oh, and you really believe all those cameras didn't catch you writing the note, or him reading it?
He sighed. Okay, fine. It was a stupid idea. She pointed at the box, a wicked grin on her face.
No, seems like it was a perfect idea.
He glanced up at her. You, wanna...
Later, she said. I need to take a look at my duffel and get it sorted.
Oh, right, he said. Your OCD is kicking in.
It is, she said. Be back in a few minutes. Maybe you can move your lazy ass and unpack your own before you get too relaxed.
Right, he said. I'll have everything unpacked by the time you get back.
You better, she said.
After lugging her duffel into her trailer, she opened it and found more than she'd asked for. Sanitary napkins, tampons, deodorant, toothpaste and toothbrush, dental floss, and condoms. She blinked at the condoms. When the confusion passed at seeing the last item, she felt a flash of anger. Why the hell had Moore put these in here? And the nerve of her to do it? She just seemed to take it as a given that Shauna would want to fuck someone? Not someone, a voice said in her mind. Shauna's expression melted from anger into a sad smile. She picked up the pack of condoms, shook her head, and tossed them aside. The rest of the duffel had the clothes she desperately needed, a hoodie, a jacket, and running shoes. She scanned the sizes, more interested in comfort than style, to ensure they fit. The hoodie would be a little large on her, but so what? She stripped off the old sweater she'd been wearing, removed the tags, and slipped on the brand new hoodie. The slight chill in the trailer disappeared at once. Still wearing a smile, she unpacked and stored her supplies in the small chest of drawers, while the toiletries ended up in the bathroom. All except, of course, for the cardboard package of condoms. Sighing, she picked them up and shuffled them beneath one of her pillows. Next time she saw Moore, she'd slug the woman. A sudden blush lit her cheeks. That bitch would probably see the surveillance recordings of her unpacking and lingering over the pack of rubbers. Hope you enjoyed the show, she thought. Shauna left the trailer, returned to Catfish's, and rapped on the metal door, but his voice was already yelling for her to come in. He sat on the couch, his eyes riveted on the coffee table. Shauna followed his gaze. An unopened carton of cigarettes sat on the table next to an assembled vaporizer and a bottle of nicotine liquid. The unopened pint of Jim Beam and the box of cannabis paraphernalia sat next to it. Wow, Shauna said, all your vices in one place. He slowly nodded. Damn near. She sat beside him on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. So what's going on? Ever since we saw that thing on Leaguer, I've wanted to smoke an entire carton in one puff. Okay, she said. Apart from that being impossible, why in the hell would you want to do that? He shrugged. Maybe because after seeing an oil slick kill over 100 people and knowing it killed dozens more back here, I don't know what the hell is what anymore. When I pulled you off Leaguer, I thought for sure you were dead. His left eye glistened, but he continued staring at the table. But I wasn't going to leave you there. Not for that thing to eat you or for you to burn. His lip quivered as though he were trying to hold back a sob. Not for you to end up like Thomas. Shauna's eyes moistened with unwelcome tears. She had no idea what to say. What could she say? That she was thankful? That he should have saved himself instead? The oppressive silence finally broke as he spoke. And now we're here, trapped in this place with no way out but to go through it all over again. Thomas is still dead, JP is still dead, and M2 is alive and well. He shook his head in disgust. And all I want to do is destroy it. She tentatively placed a hand on his shoulder. It will be, she whispered, and kissed his cheek. He flinched, his eyes opening wide in surprise. Catfish slowly turned his head, his gaze finally meeting hers. He wrapped his arms around her and kissed her lips. A few minutes later, she rushed back to the trailer while wishing she'd just brought the damned condoms.